I had a lower back crisis while I was writing the book and had to get I mean, it was embarrassing and terrible and humbling and painful. Cut to the last scene of the movie is like my son was on a swim team and it was just the right distance from home that didn't really make sense to like come home and go pick him up again. And, but it was in this park with like acres of grass. I felt like I had to learn how to run again in like the new way, right? And it felt, for some reason, no one told me this, it just felt easier barefoot. I felt like I would feel the ground better.
Henry Abbott, welcome to the American Glutton Podcast.
Thank you very much. What are we going to eat?
Oh my God, we're going to eat absolutely everything. There's a new burger place in the village called the Burgers America. I'm dreaming of this place now. Okay, I'm really excited to talk to you about. I'm not a professional athlete. I've never been a professional athlete, but I have been in my life truly obsessed with certain types of physical activity, and I almost always hurt myself. And so I want to know, like, what are your secret tips to not doing that? For me, it's become almost like a hyper vigilance of every time I go to the gym, I am walking in telling myself, don't overdo it. Don't hurt yourself. You got to be able to do this again tomorrow. You get a day off a week. But other than that, this is something you got to do for the rest of your life. And I've just gotten derailed so many times through injury. And then it's really hard to come back. So I want to hear all about that. I'm so excited about your book, honestly.
Okay, great. Well, you're not alone, man. It's everybody, right? Don't you know everybody when you go to dinner? I mean, maybe when you're 25, it's different. But once you're 40, you're like, this guy's got a hip thing. Everyone's holding back.
By the way, I said everything I said. I have a hip thing. I have knee things. Even when I'm like super careful, I've got patella tendonitis. I've got, something with my, you've got fixes for those too?
Okay. We got a lot to talk about. Yeah. So just to be clear, I'm not a doctor. I'm a journalist. I feel like the right metaphor is like I went on a 3-year trip to Paris. And I'm going to tell you what the French do, right? I know some stuff.
I love it.
I'm not French. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not a cordon bleu chef, but I got a couple of things I noticed, right? I've talked to the French.
You know where to eat. You're going to tell me where the best baguette is.
Yeah, I can know where the baguettes are. So, and I'm I'm injured too. I've dealt with my own crap, right? Like I've been an athlete, and I mean, as a guy who covers the NBA, I'm not LeBron James. I recognize there's tiers of these things. I'm in a tier of like well below LeBron James, but among the people who might run a 5K, like I'll probably win. I'm pretty fast among those people, right? Like, I'm right in there. Yeah. So I take it seriously. My wife jokes I'm a Weimaraner. Like if I don't exercise, then I might bite someone or something. Like I'm like a bad dog, but I'm a good dog if I get the exercise.
Yeah.
So anyway, I've lived this life of caring about exactly the thoughts you're thinking about. And I'm just going to paint the end picture. Like the vision on the hill is like the freest moving thing in the world, the most joyous movement. I picture like 2 dogs on a beach, just like
running and
tumbling and tripping each other and laughing, even though dogs don't laugh. And then they might go in the ocean and they might not. And that's what we all want, right? We just want to move with this kind of free joy. That's also what they want. This the place the book is about is called P3. That's also what they want. They recognize there's some stuff you got to do. PT or stuff that's kind of like PT, prescriptive exercises to address your little weaknesses, your hip, your knee, your ankle, everything. You got to work on that stuff. That's too bad. It's like you got to take your medicine. But the goal is don't think about it. The goal is relax, have fun, be free. We evolved with these brilliant machines that our bodies are really good at moving and dealing with all these forces. We just got to tweak them a little, get a little nudge this, nudge that, make it a little stronger, a little better. So that's the end goal.
Yes. I love that. I love that end goal. And by the way, let me just say for context, I was an overweight kid who was repulsed from PE because I felt like I couldn't perform the way the other kids did. So I would ditch, I would get out of it as much as possible. if I went, I would just walk laps while the other kids did like actual sports stuff. Or, you know, if they said you got to go like the startup, we're going to stretch and then run 4 laps and then we're going to start PE. I would go so slowly that those 4 laps,
that was it.
That was my whole thing. You know, I'm just walking slowly. And then I gained a lot of weight. I was 500 pounds at one point.
That's a lot.
It's a lot. And then I got to the point where I could ride a bicycle 100 miles a day, no problem. But I couldn't run a 5K. Like my cardio was incredible. I had a resting heart rate of 35 beats a minute, but I could not run a 5K. And so I'm stuck in this place where I'm like, structurally, there's something wrong. My body is just fucked. And I don't know if it was because I was so heavy. I have flat feet. I have all these issues. But so I've kind of gotten to the point, unfortunately for myself, where I can do an hour on the rowing machine, but walking, I can't run to save my life. And walking all day long sucks. It just hurts my feet and knees. And so that the way you posited joy, which is so beautiful, I'm like, I'm going to sit on the beach and watch that joy. You know what I mean? Like I want it. I want to experience
those dogs better not stray over here because I'm going to pin them. Like,
right, exactly. I'm going to hold them still and say, don't you run, you know.
You got my pants all sandy, damn dogs.
Yeah, exactly. No, there's a little bit of that. There's like a jealousy and there's also like, it's just not in the cards for me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I'm so glad you just said what you just said. Like, this is why the book is called Ballistic. Like the ballistic basically means airborne, right? I thought it meant missiles, but it also just means it's like a biomechanical term. So running is ballistic because you're fully airborne and then you hit the ground. Walking is not ballistic because you always have one foot on the ground, right? So long story short, in decades of research, what they find is basically there's kind of magic in these ballistic movements. Bad magic in that they cause injuries. They are by far the biggest forces that we encounter come from being airborne, right? As much as you might push a weight or push hard jumping off the ground, all of the biggest measurements that we measure in that lab are from landing, right? Yeah. So, that's the bad news.
The force coming down,
And then and I know I'm kind of basic with physics. I had to learn a lot for this book, but like just to recap, like if an NBA player steps off an 18-inch box, and then what is the test they do? They have them land on the force plate and then jump again, right? Part of me is like, oh, isn't it equal force? But the answer is no, because when they come off the thing, gravity, it's like the force of them is multiplied by gravity, whereas when they're jumping, the force is reduced by gravity, if that makes sense. So anyway, so like a pro boxer's punch, about 100 newtons of force. They measured an NBA player just stepping off an 18-inch box, 11,000 newtons.
Wow.
Massive forces. So that's what you're feeling when you're running, right? You're feeling like this is a lot of forces on your joints. It feels wrong.
Dude, I mean, you're saying that. I blew my meniscus out not doing box jumps, not jumping on top of the box, stepping down.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. You're in a little free fall there, right? Like walking down the stairs is actually sneaky ballistic, right? You're like,
oh my God, listen, I can walk upstairs all day long. I'm like a 90-year-old man going downstairs. It's crazy. And it drives me crazy. It's so, with my kids, I'm literally like holding the rail, gripping for life, going downstairs. It's embarrassing. And like, I can do a heavy squat. I don't, these things are, going downstairs sucks.
So this is the other reason it's called ballistic is because it's also the cure. This might really apply to you. Even at our advanced age, we can improve on these things. So the cure is neurological. Like it's about the nervous system signals that you send up and down the chain in your body as you step up that step. Like I'm going to just guess, totally not a doctor. This is exactly the kind of thing I shouldn't say, but I'm going to guess that like the years you didn't do PE class, right, are years you didn't develop these subconscious motor programs that would keep you safe today, right? Like it's easy, just like it's easier to learn French when you're young, it's easier to learn landing when you're young, right?
For sure. Yes, I never learned any of them. I never participated.
Yeah. And this is the reason that, like, I know it's a little scary to have your kids climb trees and jump off things, but like you kind of do want them to do that because they're going to have a big vocabulary of movement so they can move without hinky issues later in life, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't have a great, I mean, I had a pretty free Roman childhood, but I didn't really know how to use my hips right. And so I have to kind of like, I'm paying the price for that. And I have to do a bunch of homework on that. I'm like doing my vocab tests on my hip, right? But so yeah, so I think that this is the trick is going to be all of the stuff that is in the book is about what they do for NBA players who have like a mild version of what you have. They land a little screwy and it hurts them, right? This is how Derrick Rose tore his ACL, right? Same exact thing, just on a different version. And they put you through a pretty rigorous bunch of assessments and they'll say, oh, it looks like you have like this issue in your hips, this issue in your knees, this issue in your ankles. And we're going to strengthen this and get more mobility in that. And then we're going to drill it enough and fast enough that you do it subconsciously.
Right.
And I think it's all work you can do. The first step, I think, bummer of the book is that the real takeaway is everybody has to have their own personal prescription. I can't tell you something that's good for everybody listening to this. That's the party line. I did extract a few little things from
that's really useful too, because I feel the same way about dieting. I hate when I go, I open up Instagram and it's like, just do this. Everyone needs to just do X. And it's like, that's just not true.
It's always wrong.
I think in a very similar way, that makes sense to me. And nobody has this kind of ingrained learned patterns that you're talking about. It's not just identical from person to person.
Not even close. Yeah. And this is the great news, I think, for you is that, there used to be this kind of black box of like, what causes all these injuries, right? And you can't really try going to your primary care physician, try going to a physical therapist, like we're missing the signal, right? Like we're missing the critical part. The critical part. So this dude, Marcus Elliott, found a P3 after he tore his ACL, and then he just got really bullheaded about it. He just wanted to figure it out so other people wouldn't go through the same thing, right? He got depressed. He was locked in his bedroom for a long time, and his dreams of playing football were all dashed, and he eventually got his way to Harvard Medical School, and he went through years, decades of, is it biochemistry that we're going to look at? Is it brain scans? Is it, is it physiology? There are all these different inputs, right? Just trying to find the signal of what does an ACL tear look like before, right? So we can address it before you have it. His mom at Harvard Medical School, they're really big on this guy, Paul Dudley White. Have you ever heard that name?
No.
So if you go to Boston and ride your bike along the river, that's the Paul Dudley White bike path. Okay. And he's like, Boston's such an incredible city that has like a celebrated cardiologist. Like most cities don't have that. But so Paul Dudley White, people were dropping dead of heart attacks. Even when we were younger, it was like a thing, right? Like it was a pretty common way to die. But Paul Dudley White was one of the pioneering doctors who was like, oh, it's not just God striking you down for coveting your neighbor's wife or whatever. It's 10 years of the blood flow slowing down through your heart. And then you have the heart attack, right? So then he was one of the pioneers who was like, we can treat the heart attack before you have it because we can see on that little beeping machine that they have in every hospital scene of a movie, the heart attack before it happens, right? So then we change your diet, exercise, medicine, whatever. And it's like the most successful intervention of all time. So Marcus wanted to do this for ACL tears, lower back pain, Achilles tears, etc. And for years, it wasn't clear where the clues would pop up. Right? There was no one knew where it was. But now after all these years of looking, like, oh, it's in movement data, right. Which means it's not in your MRI. It's not in your X-ray because you're lying still, right? It's in all these little funny things about how you move. So that's why it's careful type prescription just for you because no one moves just like you, right? You got some weird stuff.
Okay, I have questions before we go on.
Bring them. Yep.
So I understand everything you're saying, and it makes sense to me. But through reading your book, am I going to be able to identify those myself? Or because to me, it sounds like I need to go see somebody so they can spot my movement patterns that need to be worked on.
So I think what's happening right now is the whole world is changing from there's nowhere you can go where they can tell you about your movement, or maybe there's like, they call them unicorns, just like some soft tissue wizard who happens to be in your neighborhood you can visit, to now there's like the science is coming that there might be a real just answer for like, oh, you're working on hip external rotation and then you'll feel much better once you get that down, right? So that's coming. In the meantime, I did once I started annoying them enough with questions for the rest of us, right? We're not NBA players. We're not spending tens of thousands on these things.
Right, yeah, that was going to be my follow-up. It's like, do you have to, is it going to cost $1 million so I can walk downstairs?
Just give me the $1 million. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. I'll get you down the stairs. I'll just buy you one of those like,
yeah.
like a,
Yeah. Right. Yeah. We'll spend 50 grand on that and pocket the other 900. Yeah. And we're done.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're fine. But puppies on the beach, but
yeah.
So okay, but I spent a lot of time. They're thinking about how to make the best athletes in the world better, and I was like, just come on, tell us stuff for the rest of us. And like I did, they told me enough that I had to hire an illustrator to like show you the things that you're gonna want to know that we can start today, right?
Okay.
There's a bunch of stuff. So there's a warm up, which is surprisingly helpful. I think we all have our little issues, but this is a different warm up than you've probably done before. And I've just found there are days where I wake up feeling like hell. You do these little 13 things, and now your work at the gym, you're a little less likely to get hurt, a little feeling peppier. But I think that's kind of the crux of it. That a thing that is describable on a podcast is this little hip assessment. Okay, so they've had tens of thousands of elite athletes assessed in there, and basically every single person needs work on their hips. So, and we know it in our own lives, right? Like I know my mother-in-law had hip replacement. Everyone's having hip replacement. It's so cool. I saw an estimate there's gonna be 1 million hips replaced in the U.S. like next year, I think.
Wow.
Like our hips are screwed up, right? So, and there's 1 million little recommendations in there, but they all fit into one of two categories. Either you need work on hip stability or hip mobility. And you should know which group you're in and you should work on that, right? You want both. You need both. So what usually happens is people have very mobile hips, like they kill in a yoga class and they feel amazing and they look great. And, but they just keep working on more mobility, whereas they need strength, like weightlifting. They need more stability, right? Whereas over in the CrossFit gym, like, I asked Marcus, the guy, I'm like, how do I know if I need work with hip mobility? And he's like, I think you know. Which
do you excel at? Deadlifts or yoga?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And you should switch, right? Everybody should switch.
Right. And the way you're talking, I'm like, okay, I should probably go do some yoga and chill out on the deadlifts.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can keep doing, I think you just don't want to neglect either one, right?
Right.
And like you're probably, if you went to P3, I'm guessing, well, I'll tell you my story. Like I go there, they start cranking on me and have me jump around. And they're like, we're not terribly impressed with the range of motion in your hips. And I'm like the least surprised human of all time. And so now I add that to my routine, right? That's something I'm instead of over time getting worse and worse at that, I'm getting better and better at that. Like, and you can do a little home assessment. So if you can side plank, this is a very hard thing to do. If you can side plank with your body in a big X, it's almost like Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Yeah, arm up, leg up.
Oh, on your hand, not on your elbow.
Yeah, on your hand. If you can hold that for 30 seconds, 10 toes pointing forward, then they're willing to say your hips are stable enough. That's very hard.
And if your toes go wonky, that's no good.
Keep working on it. Yeah.
Okay.
And then if you can do a standing figure 4, so this is where, like, let's say I'm standing on my left leg, with my right ankle just above my left knee, and then I'm just going to kind of, while balancing there, just sit down. If I can get low into that, butt back, chest up, if you can sink into that, or similarly, it's a similar move to doing a pigeon on the floor. If you can really sink into it, then like your hips are probably mobile enough.
Like, okay, how far do you have to sink? Do you have to have your ass to your ankle or below? Do you have to break
Please
parallel?
do that. Yeah, get your ass to your ankle.
Yeah, I mean, how if I just get parallel, does that count? I want to be below?
Honestly, parallel is pretty hard to do in that move. Yeah. I think you can parallel. I'm going to give you my totally
like
amateur
a little
seal
bit
approval.
of a squat, a half squat works.
I think of it to me, it feels like, when you're kind of upright, you're using a lot of muscles of your leg to kind of balance there. And once you get back, you're in your glute, right? Yeah. You're in that standing glute. If you're like in that glute, it feels to me, I'm giving myself a merit badge if I get into the glute,
Okay.
And it probably isn't as deep as I think it is. It probably, if I had a mirror, I'd be like, it's like, 70 degrees, but it feels like it's 45 degrees,
Yeah.
But yeah, you kind of know if you're like stable and sink in there. And then it's so easy. You can work on those things. Everyone can work on those things. There's 1 million people close to you who know how to help you with those things. YouTube can help you with those things. But if you're just generally like, oh, I'm someone who needs to work on hip mobility, then you're moving a lot away from injury and closer to being bouncy, right? And closer to playing on the beach like a puppy, right? That's a big category. The other big category, they've done all this work, is we're all pretty much should be doing a little bit of plyometrics. That's going to be challenging for a lot of us, right? It can start really basic and little, a little jumping rope. One of the part of their assessment is like they put like a dowel, basically a broom handle, on the floor, and then you stand next to it, both feet together, facing the same parallel to the dowel, and then you just hop sideways, back and forth across it. There's a dude who did it 43 times in 8 seconds.
Jesus. He's going to have no problems when he grows up, that guy, right? That's insane.
It's a problem. They show the video of him doing a couple different moves. He's just like this, like he's a kid who grew up in Santa Barbara and played college soccer at BU and looks like he's going to become a venture capitalist one day. And guess what? He did. But right. But the NBA players, they show him that little video on the phone, and they're all just like, oh, because he just moves like a dream. He just is like, it's awesome. But so you just want to boop, 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 these kind of little movements. This is the beginning of you going down the stairs feeling much better, right? Because this is how when you're really fast like this, you are skipping over all of the silly, like, I'm going to try to land this way, blah, blah, and moving right to just like, my subconscious is going to manage this and it's going to get good at it. And, like 100% of pro track athletes have beautiful foot form on the ground because they have to. Otherwise, they're too slow.
This is the stuff that I have been thinking about lately, unfortunately. I'm not even 50. I'm almost 50, but I am thinking about like hearing the stories about the guy, who in his 70s just fell down and then his life ended like 6 months later simply because he broke his hip, and then the healing process, he just withered away and died. And this seems to be fairly common. Yeah. Maybe not as common as heart disease or cancer, but like that kind of storyline to life where you're pretty relatively healthy and then you just a simple fall takes you out. And it's those kind of movements that you're talking about that I've been going like, that is really not a part of my repertoire at all in the gym. I am working major muscle groups, but kind of with no thought, to be honest with you, just like retain muscle mass. I want my quads. I want my hamstrings. I don't really care about my calves because they're gigantic. I want my chest. I want my arms. I want my back. Like, that's it, Yeah. And I have been thinking more and more like it shouldn't suck to go down the stairs. By the way, it didn't suck as much when I was 500 pounds as it does now, literally half that weight. And in, under 15% body fat, and I can do plenty of cardio, and yet walking down the stairs sucks. And every time I do it, I'm like, this shouldn't be. This is not right.
Yeah. Yeah. We're coming at this from opposite. Like I was like a cross country runner and didn't really want to carry a suitcase, right. And had to get used to doing some stuff with weights and stuff in my 30s or whatever, because I was having my own issues. But I think that like I try to just be a person who says yes to stuff, right?
Yeah.
Or like if someone's like, hey, you guys want to play blank? Like I feel like I'm not the best at this age. I'm 50 of just like, I'm not training for a marathon, right? You know what I mean? Like, but if I need to say yes to things just to kind of keep moving, right?
Yeah.
And but when you're in pain or feel heavy and slow or whatever, like you say no, right?
Right.
Then you're just like, I'm the guy who sits in the chair in the corner, right? And like, I think that's kind of hard on aging. I think you do kind of want to be up and around guy, right? And so I feel like there's a lot of value in like, can you get fit enough that when someone's going to go, like, we're going to go tomorrow and jump off this waterfall. Like you walk in 20 minutes and it's only like, it's not, you walk through the woods for a bit. And then when you get there, you cradle this little rock. I don't know, it's 10, 12 feet. Little kids do it. Like,
sounds like an adventure. Yeah.
Beautiful, crystal clear landing. I think it's actually quite safe. And then I'm telling you, by the time we're walking back to the car, everybody's acting like they're high as a kite. Like they're just like, everyone's just in love. It's just like everyone's becoming friends and it's like sunny and like the birds are chirping and it's like, you got to get there, right? Or stuff like that. It needs to be fun so that you want to keep doing it, right? And so anyway, so to me, I think this is the reason to do some pain in the ass, like, a little jumping rope, a little bit of this like ballistic stuff, is just because it opens a little door to becoming a puppy on the beach,
Yeah. No, I hear you. I can't wait to get into your book and like find these things that I can incorporate into my routine that will assist in all of this, because to be honest with you, I don't know what they are, but every time I'm like, well, I know there's no real dynamic movements. I'm not doing Olympic lifts so much. Sometimes I'll swing a kettlebell. But like there is something missing, and I'll do it, and it's uncomfortable in a way that is not the same kind. Like I like the discomfort in lifting weights. I like the discomfort in hard cardio exertions. I don't like the discomfort in walking downstairs. I don't like the discomfort in jumping. And so like, jumping over a dowel, that's a good place to start, because it's really, we're talking about like an inch, right? And it's not like off a 2-foot box.
Yeah, actually, that's what you're bringing up. This was a big kind of, I think I wrote a half chapter about this, but it just was too weird and didn't put it in the book. But okay, in my experience, when you get into the work that you need, right? Like I've been going to the gym and doing like, push on this, pick that up, like I'm very comfortable with like that stress. It's kind of straightforward, right?
Yeah.
Like I guess we can all picture the force of like a push up, and it's like, but the work that I really needed, it all felt weird as hell.
Well,
right?
no, I mean, like what you're talking about, push. Yeah, okay. And then there can be some adjustments to like form when you're pushing, you want to keep your, maybe it's your shoulders tight, your core engaged, that kind of thing. When you're talking about landing from a jump, I've never once had anybody talk to me about like the form of landing. That's a very complicated thing, which I even assume structurally from body to body is going to be slightly varied.
It is, but there's some stuff I can tell you right now that's helpful. But just to the point about things being weird, I'll tell you, last week I was back at P3 and I mentioned I have weird hips, and like picture doing like I forget what it's called, but there's a move where you're basically like an airplane. You're standing on one leg and you like tip your whole body forward, right? I'm doing that. And this guy, Alex, is great. He's like, okay, well, that's where you are. And then he just like pulls my heel back. Like he's pulling like a handle. And like, so that where I'm weighting my hip is changing, right? And just like, and get in this weird place. And like, it feels like very, not painful, but just like new. And he's like, that's where you want to be. Right. And like, these are the kinds of things that I'm working on. It's just like, it's not at all like the work of pushing. It's just like, weird body discovery,
right.
Okay, but so let's talk about landing. So, oh man, are you willing to go for a little detour to Russia and this like Soviet science thing?
Tell me, I want to hear it. Yeah,
I love this part of the story. So there was a guy named Yuri Verkhoshansky, who's like maybe the godfather of sports science, and he. Back in those days, they would give like a bunch of elite athletes to a scientist to like work on, right? In the Soviet Union, which is like,
they just wanted to win. They were like, we're going to put so much into you guys winning.
So he had these triple jumpers and he did the math. I'm not good at this, but he was, where you would like the triple jumpers would run and they would put their last foot down in the triple jump at a certain place and they would travel a certain distance and they weighed a certain amount, which means you can calculate the force they put into the ground. But he's like, they would put 300 kilograms of force into the ground. So they can push 300 kilograms. He's like, but they can't in the gym. Like, what's up with that? You give them 300 kilograms on a bar that no one can move it, not even close. So he then started having to do half squats. And they could do like a lot more than they could do a full squat, but nowhere close to 300. He tried having them lie on their back with their feet above them. And like his assistants would hold the bar on their feet and like push it that way. No one can get close to 300 thing. And so eventually,
kilograms is a lot of weight.
It's absurd. And they're little skinny dudes. These are triple jumpers, right? Then he figures out that it's actually the reason they can push this much force is because of the run up. So like their foot's on the ground for like less than 1/10 of a second and they're carrying all this force from the run up. Right. And so they like, it's not the same as the weight, right? So it's like, well, why don't we make a system of training where we train that, right? Where we train using your body weight in this quick thing and like get your body used to pushing. These are the biggest forces anybody pushes, are all in these like moments of landing and pushing off again, right? And so he invented what he called the shock method, which now is what we call plyometrics. So that's when this whole system of training began, where it's like you're going to practice bouncing. And what you're practicing is, making your brain faster. So that's the base layer of like, you want to get good at that. Now, for some reason, when this came to the US, all the coaches who made it popular coached to land with toes down. It's still common. People still coach. Like if you go to like your local high school, they might teach sprinters to like run with their toes down. They don't. At Marcus, the guy at P3, like always hated that. He trained a bunch of elite athletes, and he watched like elite runners from all over the world, and they all land with what they call a dorsiflexed foot. And the easy thing they would say to you is just land with your toes up. So they want you to land on the ball of your foot. Your toes won't actually look like they're up, but you'll feel like you're pulling
flexed.
them up. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now you got to train for this. You don't just start doing this tomorrow because like it'll hurt I know you got big calf muscles, but like it's going to really tax them. Right. So,
I also have flat feet. I mean, I'm already picturing my feet cracking in half
just
trying to do this.
They just fell off. Yeah. Yeah. So when you land, if you land with your toes down, then the next thing that happens is your heel just like plummets down.
Yeah.
What happens then is like all of the force of your torso, which is 80% of your weight, is coming down at the earth, and the earth is very still, right? It's like a high school physics problem. But as they hit each other, now they're hitting each other through your heel, which goes straight through bone, your tibia, to your knee. Yeah. And that's an uncomfortable way for that. It makes a lot more force. All the biggest measurements they have at P3 are from people landing toes first, and then the heel smacks down with like record-setting force. So if you train your ankle to be what they call stiff, which really just kind of means strong and still, then when you land with your toes up, all that same force goes into the ball of your foot, and that gets kind of designed to go into your Achilles, and then into your quads, and then into your glutes.
Oh, wow.
And you can absorb like massive amounts of force safely that way.
So you're actually rebuilding through cognitive thought somehow, through intention. You're rebuilding the shock absorber from
totally
force into your knee and probably into your hip, into your muscles, which I would assume, can take a lot more because they're malleable. They're not rigid like bone.
Absolutely. They can take so much more. And there's a little freebie here, which is they're rubber bands, right? So if you land and stretch the rubber bands, you get like free carriage into the next move because they snap back. Right. So runners, I'm citing this research from this guy, Tim Noakes, but like runners carry between 93% of the force from like one step to the next, or as low as 45%. So like you want to get those freebies, right? You want to get these rubber bands stretching, right? And a lot of runners don't. And so like two things are happening there, right? You're getting more injuries and you're getting harder running, right? It's more difficult. So, you want to get a little bouncy. I swear to God,
as you're saying this, I'm literally trying to figure out how to walk downstairs with my toes flexed. Like, this is what I'm thinking about.
You want to take a minute? You want to take a little break?
No. I'm planning it out. By the way, I'm going to put this into action today. I swear to God.
So I'm going to tell you, I went through the same thing, right? I had my own, I had a lower back crisis while I was writing the book and had to get it was embarrassing and terrible and humbling and painful, but cut to the last scene of the movie is like my son was on a swim team and it was just the right distance from home that didn't really make sense to like come home and go pick him up again. And but it was in this park with like acres of grass, and the pool was there, and I felt like I had to learn how to run again and like the new way, right? And it felt, for some reason, no one told me this, it just felt easier barefoot. I felt like I would feel the ground better. And this park was basically empty. And I was like, I don't want to be that weirdo. Everyone knows that guy's a weirdo who's running around barefoot. But I was like, I got to do it. And I would run these laps of this. It's like rolling grassy hills barefoot. And I could just feel, it felt weird, really weird at first. But after a little while, I was like, oh, I could kind of feel like my foot hitting the way they wanted it to hit, and then the reverberation of it would be in my butt. Like, so left foot down and left hip is like working for the first time in my life, and it's like bing, and you kind of like
you get it, and then but then you still have to practice it because you have 40 plus years of doing it the other way, which can take over if you don't think. That's why I think what you're talking about with the really a lot of repetition and practice is important.
And they one of their key practice things is this thing called an impulse box, and like it's I've never seen it anywhere else. It's they made it out of plywood. It's like flat on the bottom, and then it's got like 45 degree angles. It's almost like a little half pipe. And you basically dance on it. Like there's a coach there, and they're like, okay, you're gonna like bounce on this leg, and then pop this leg out to the side, and then bounce on that leg, and then switch legs, and then boop, 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 and then you do this little pattern, and then you just kind of accelerate so much that you lose it. And you do it for 10 seconds or so and lose it and do it again. Meanwhile, they're just like faster, faster, faster.
Right.
And the point is like the only way to get really fast is to relax. Like you can see high school students in there and they're like super and they just don't get that fast. But like there's a guy named Christian Ramirez who was like, I think he was like a UCLA quarterback. I don't know football very well, but there's a video of him and Ethan, it's like you just want to be Christian Ramirez. He's just like, he's just like, and his feet are fucking, can I curse here? Like
sure.
His feet are fucking flying and his face is just chill. And like, as soon as you see it, you're like, I want to be Christian Ramirez, right?
Yeah.
Like this is one of the drills. They have they'll do strength. They have a strength in your lower leg. A bunch of different ways. They'd have you do balance stuff. Oh, there's a cool one. Try this. Stand on one leg and just hold something kind of heavy. Maybe start with a soup can and just pass it, like hold it out in your right hand and then just pass it over your left hand while you're staying on one leg. That's all. Just pass it back and forth. I think you'll find it's terribly hard at the beginning, but if you do it,
just standing on one leg is very hard. It's terribly hard.
It's not great.
No, not great.
But super learnable. Like it gets way better. Yeah.
I want to go back to you running barefoot, and this is. I want to know if our footwear is partially responsible for any of this stuff.
I'm not even kidding. This is like a setup. I have the book here, and I like is literally for no reason is opening this page, but okay, this guy Daniel Lieberman at Harvard just notes that habitually barefoot or minimally shod humans tend to walk and run differently than shod people, often in a way that leads to very low collision forces, even on very hard surfaces. Right. So like that thing I'm talking about landing bouncy with the soft tissues, like you would never land on your heel barefoot.
Right.
It would hurt too much, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. That's literally what I'm thinking. Like a lot of these problems are that we're, and I think this is particularly true for me. Like I have such bad feet that I'll want to bind them so tight so that they cannot move. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
like,
don't do that.
I know it's not good, but like if like yesterday I was with my family and we were going to have it was a beautiful day and we were going to have a whole day outside. And like, I knew this is going to suck. I'm going to get 25,000 steps today. Man, I cut the circulation off from my feet. They were so tight. And I was like, if I'm not going to actually wrap them with ace bandages, I just got to jack these laces up really tight. But I don't think that's actually benefiting me long-term. I think that's like, wearing a cast where it's like protective for the moment, but like tomorrow is going to suck even worse.
Yeah, this is something I've been fascinated by for a while. So I did this thing at South by Southwest years ago with like a biomechanical expert named Jay DeCherry, great guy. And Jay was just making small talk and he's talking about how he'd been working with some elite runners from Africa. And he's like, oh, their feet are just beautiful. And I was like, well, like, go on, like,
yes. Tell me more. I want to hear about this.
He's like, oh, it's like they're muscles in your feet, just like any part of your body. And like, we tend not to have very well developed muscles in our feet because we do a bunch of dumb stuff when we're young. But like they're barefoot, covering great distances when they're young, and they just have these like really beefy, strong feet.
Jacked feet.
Aren't you jealous of that?
Totally. Like no, I mean, I have no muscle in my feet. It's the only part of my body that has no muscle whatsoever. And it's probably the thing that gives me the biggest trouble. Like, my knee hurts going downstairs. Sometimes I get like a weird phantom pain if I don't straighten my leg. That's from the patella tendonitis. If I'm standing all day, I'll get hip pain. My feet hurt every day, no matter what. No matter what I do, my feet hurt every day. And, I think there's...
Have you been to doctors?
Yeah, and I have insoles that help. And, and if my...
You don't have fasciitis?
I don't have fasciitis. No, okay, that's like a pain in the underside, right? Like I
think it goes all over, but I think it's often a very painful thing. Yeah.
I just think I have weak, flat feet. you know.
Yeah.
And I went to a podiatrist. I've been to two where I was like, can you surgically fix my feet? And they said no. And they were like, you just gotta like strengthen them. And and that's one of those things where I'm like, dude, my feet hurt so bad at the end of the day. I'm not doing extra stuff to make them more sore, you know, but I actually have been lately starting to think about these things and going like, my chest is pretty well developed. My glutes and quads are pretty well developed. My back is well developed. My arms are well developed. I probably should start working on my feet and like my hips and things like that in other ways than just doing deadlifts, you know? I don't work on my feet at all.
Yeah, it's become, you know, the way that this P3 body of research is kind of landing, it's just, if your feet are not doing their job, your injury risk of all kinds of injuries skyrockets. Number one cause of ACL tear, and they're like 100% of the NBA players in their big study they did of ACL tear, 100% of them had the same kind of foot problem. It's the only thing 100% of them in the study had. And the foot problem they have is landing on the outside of the foot and then rolling to the inside. A little bit of that is common, but a lot of it is like 5-alarm fire of knee injury risk. And I asked one of the trainers there, I'm like, well, what's behind that? Like, why would your foot do that? And he's like, I think it's just kind of sloppy. Like, it's just kind of weak, you know, like.
Well, and let me ask you a question. Were they better off when they were all wearing like minimalist shoes like Converse? You know, like if you go back to the beginning of basketball, their shoes have become like moon boots. You know what I mean? Like, are those better than the what they used to have, which is just like a flat rubber sole?
The big bummer is nobody knows because it's not studied. Like there was this article in Lower Extremity Review, which is a super cool publication, about and it says as of a few years ago, there's not a single athletic shoe that's been demonstrated in like respected research to reduce injury of any kind for anyone.
Right.
So like all of the thoughts about all that stuff they told us about pronation or whatever, all these things, like nobody knows.
Yeah.
We know that, you know, there's a lot of habits of movement that look dangerous that seem to be a byproduct of wearing shoes. Like there's a lot of suggestions that like wearing athletic shoes can make it worse. But
that's just shoes in general.
Yeah. I didn't actually, you know, in these minimalist shoes, these zero drop shoes, it makes a lot of sense, I think, biomechanically. Remember I was talking about how when your toes touch down first and then your heels slam down, it's really bad? Well, a regular athletic shoe has a 10 millimeter drop from heel to the front of the shoe. There's no scientific basis for this, and it makes them really mad at P3 because they're like, oh, so a kid has an angle like this, and Shaquille O'Neal has an angle like that, and those are both the right angle? Like, probably not, right? But yeah, so you're a little bit prompted to do this bad landing, right? So a lot of NBA players go to P3, and before they do certain movements, they're like, you just got to take your shoes off because we're worried you're going to have an injury because of the shoe.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, so I do think that, I don't know, me personally, I'm barefoot right now. I'm barefoot almost all the time if I can be. And if I go you know, if there's a chance to do something and like, I'll go for a pretty extraordinary hike in like flimsy little sole shoes because I want to get those muscles going, you know?
Yeah.
I want to have them strong. And I don't know. My daughter actually she did have fasciitis and she's doing real deal like physical therapy for her feet muscles. She's doing like all kinds of crazy, like, you know, raise your big toe, raise your little toes, dome your foot, like all this kind of stuff that like I've never seen before. And she went from being in a bunch of pain to not at all. And I feel like it's probably going to serve her for the rest of her life, having those awesome jacked feet, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great point. It is a hole, you know, I spot these holes and then I think about them, but like I want to have like an actual prescription for like do X, Y, and Z because I can do something every day, you know. Yeah. I don't know that I could do 25,000 steps in minimalist shoes. I think my feet would just fall apart at this point.
No, don't. And you got to ease into these things, right? You got to train for it. You know, or one of the things they had me doing was just, you know, stand on one leg and then just raise up and lower down with your full body weight on just one foot, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot one of the things they're targeting there is the soleus. This is a very interesting muscle that I think is kind of genius and underappreciated. So your calves, the part you can see on the outside is the gastrocnemius, but there's like the tibialis posterior and the soleus in there. The soleus does a lot of really important stuff that's kind of underappreciated. One of the things it does is it pumps blood back up to your heart.
Oh, wow.
And I think I'm like, oh, that makes a lot of sense to me that like, I've covered NBA players most of my life and they have some terrible foot problems. And like, I've had doctors think like, it's just because their foot is so far from their heart. They get like crappy blood flow.
Right.
You know, like bigger people tend to have more foot problems. And part of it is just physics, but I think part of it is just like the heart's just far away. And so you can work on that. You can get better blood flow in your foot. And I'm like, oh, that seems like a good starting point, right?
Yeah, totally.
You know, do that. And then maybe like I have a little routine. I wonder if I want to mess with video. I have a little author website. This might be a little thing I can make a video of, but just the stuff they gave me there's one little round of 4 exercises, which is, this calf raises and lowers, you jump rope for a second, pass a kettlebell back and forth while you stand on one leg. And then there's a really weird move where you take like a band that's behind you diagonally and you like pull it with your groin muscle while you balance. But it's all like, but once you do that a few times, you're like, I feel pretty good in the lower leg. I feel pretty stable down there. And
yeah.
It's a good feeling.
Yeah. I wonder, if I look back at my life and the things that I was actively trying to fix, forever it was just weight, right? And now, once I've gotten to a place where I'm consistently maintaining for many years and happy with where I'm at, then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I've had this problem forever, but it seemed to not even be on the stovetop because everything else was range was on fire. You know what I mean?
Totally.
But having this conversation, I wonder if there were aspects of me being very sedentary as a kid that were just like structurally, I didn't know how to, do X, Y, and Z in a way. Like, I don't know how to run because running hurt, right? And I didn't know, like nobody said, like, try to run this way and see what it's like. And maybe it would, you know what I mean? And I wonder if that's similar for many people and many very overweight people who are highly inactive, because like activity hurts, it can hurt. And
your body's telling you not to do it. Yeah.
Right. And it's not in the way of like, I go to the gym and I get, delay onset muscle soreness and I'm like happy with that kind of pain because I did it to myself. It's not the same. If my wife asked me to carry something upstairs, I'm happy to do it all day long. If she asked me to carry something downstairs, I like wither away from that idea, and I'm like suddenly like, okay, if I can carry it in this arm, I can grip the banister in this arm, and like that sucks, But I think there were largely many parts of my childhood where PE was just like, no, that's a bad pain. I don't want that pain. I'm going to avoid that pain, so I'm going to avoid doing anything, involving that.
I think it's just I'm obsessed with this. Like Oliver Sacks was this like British. Do you know this name? He was I think he may have died, but he wrote some books, and he's a neuroscientist, neurologist, just a groundbreaking expert on the noggin, right? And he has this thing where he's like, language is this little thing. The part of our brain that manages language is this little tiny thing that sits on top of this much bigger thing that is movement. Right. Like the way that we move is really super complicated, right? They can't teach robots to move like us yet because it's just they don't have the processing power, right? And so, but it is like language in that you kind of learn it. Ideally, you learn Spanish by just living in Buenos Aires, or like they speak Portuguese in Buenos Aires. I don't know. Maybe that's
no. I think Buenos Aires is Spanish. Yeah.
Okay, good. But hopefully you just learn it and it's natural and it feels great. And, you can dance, right? But maybe it's your second language, and maybe you didn't pick it up till you're 40, and now you gotta drill, right? Now you gotta do the vocab, and now you gotta get some basics down. Same exact thing with movement, right? Like this is the reason P3 exists. Isn't because they want you to come and do drills. It's because they want you to go play on the beach.
Yeah.
But you're missing this little thing, so we're gonna drill you a little bit on that, and then you can have the full immersion program in your new Spanish outside, and do fun stuff.
Yeah.
And like, I think that's why you just you got a little less Spanish than a lot of people growing up. Right. I think about like, I spent so much of my summer days, like like my buddy Chris would chuck a Nerf football, and I would jump off the diving board and try to catch it at a weird angle while twisting before I hit the water. Like I spent a lot of time working on that.
Right.
Like that's kind of
perfected that.
I perfected it, but I was working on it.
Yeah, sure.
I put some like movement things in there that makes it a little. And I was just in California last week. I literally we did a sneaky thing you're not supposed to do, where we went and jumped off the end of this pier in Santa Barbara, and I guess it's against the rules, but you had to be kind of. There was a moment of just okay, we climb up on the railing and then woo, and
no fear of sharks. I mean. The fall is so much less scary to me than the sharks.
Well, I've talked to a lot of people who get in the water around there, and there are sharks a little further up, but they're very rare in there. Actually, honestly, shark attacks in general are very rare. I know that they're getting a little worse, but I play a numbers game a little bit of just it's dangerous to drive to the beach,
Yes,
that's
fair.
But I feel a little bit the moment of just I'm doing this, I'm scrambling up, and I'm jumping. I kind of practiced that a little bit, right? It's a little more easy and fun for me because I did it when I was 6, right?
Yeah.
And, it's a little gift. So I think this is where, as a parent, I think about this where my son was always hey, Dad. He had this really weirdly low voice when he was little. He was a tiny little, he's like, hey, Dad, is it okay if I climb that tree? And part of me is your little body is going to break so easily if you fall. But another part of me is you're going to need this, and I would try to say yes, try to just let him explore and learn some new stuff. And he kept not, other than the one time bit through his tongue, he kept not injuring himself. And so, he got really good at skateboarding and ripsticking and swimming and jumping off stuff and mountain biking and just kind of all these weird movement things that I think is part of the package of learning to become a puppy on the beach.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. The puppy on the beach. I love through this conversation. The first time you set up that kind of metaphor, it was it's not in the cards for me.
We're getting there.
I'll watch the puppies, and now towards the end, I'm okay, just land on the ball of my feet with my toes flexed, and one day I will be the puppy on the beach.
You could be the puppy in the water,
right?
You could be, not all the puppies have to be on the beach all the time.
Well, the puppy in the water, I'm good with now.
Yeah.
So long as the sharks are offshore, I'm good with the puppy in the water now. I could pull that off today.
See?
But well, man, once you get to soft sand, dry sand, running and frolicking in dry sand, that's just not in the cards for me today.
Do a little, do a little. 10 steps, whatever, feel it out.
I love it.
Yeah.
Henry, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much.
No, it's so fun. I love what you're doing. I love this whole project. It seems like you're getting in some interesting stuff here. And I feel like your heart's just totally in the right place, man. I'm rooting for you.
Yeah. I'm rooting for you. I can't wait to read your book, and I'm rooting for everybody else who has problems similar to mine.
Yeah, let's get moving. Moving's fun, right? Moving's a big part of joy. We got to do this. Yeah.
That's right. All right. Thank you.